Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. You're certainly much more attentive than my students this time of day. Um, and I've been enjoying the presentation so far. Today, I'm talking about Kava or Kava, which is Piper methysticum. And it's a topic that I've been following, pardon me, that I've been following for several years. My university, uh, I'm not sure if you're aware that Texas in the United States has a special program that veterans can attend state universities free of tuition. So we have a large population of military veterans, male and female, across the armed forces on my campus. And the U.S. has been involved for 20 years now with Afghanistan, with Iraq, with other conflicts. So for us, it's a new situation where we have a professional military instead of a draft military or conscript military, but that means that we have individuals who aren't serving 3 and 4 years, but they're serving decades in the military. And so instead of short tours, they're having multiple long tours. So we have a very high rate amongst our military veterans of PTSD, anxiety disorders, and stress disorders. And we have a lot of veterans on campus. And since I'm interested in alternative medicine and natural medicines, they tend to talk to me. One of the things they've been talking to me about is treatment options. And uh-oh, I can't forward. There we go. Yeah, we go. Technology. One of the things that they're very interested in is alternative options to treat uh, PTSD, to treat generalized anxiety disorder, and in particular, just having control. And I think this is a thing we've seen a lot with all of the therapies that we've seen throughout this conference and throughout our entire field is people wanting to have control and wanting natural options. One of the things that I hear them talk about quite a bit is Kava. So I thought I would start off and give you a little bit of information about Kava, just in case you are unfamiliar with it. And plus, I think all of us are people who enjoy hearing about medicinal plants and their origins, the traditional uses of the plants compared to or in contrast to popular preparations today. And then a little bit about why veterans have made this choice and continue to make this choice, in particular for treating their stress. Um, just quickly, the active compounds in kava are kavalactones. They are classed as depressants and intoxicants. They're classified as anxiolytics or medications to treat anxiety and stress. So kava has lots of common names. The one I had heard the most of my background uh, is looking at modern herbal usages, but also European, uh, medieval, and romantic period use of medicinal plants. So kava, really well known in traditional Chinese medicine. Uh, I've seen, although I'm not an expert with Ayurveda, I know just a smidge of it. I've seen it mentioned by Ayurvedic practitioners and others, and I'm sure many of the people at this conference know quite a bit more about that than I. Names Kava, Kawa, depending on where you are in the South Pacific, that V or that A could vary. Ava pepper or aloe root are other names for it, but also sakau and yapona in Fiji. Its Latin name is Piper methysticum. I like the methysticum because it has a kind of mystic, and it refers to that sort of mystic ritual usage of it. It's family from the piper. It's from the family Piperaceae. It's a very close relative of black pepper, which many of us are familiar with. And even though a lot of people have it on their table most days, very few people realize how important black pepper has been medicinally across different cultures. It's an erect, robust, succulent, semi-succulent, tropical evergreen shrub. The leaves are heart-shaped and pointed and smooth, with palmate venation. They're green on both sides, not fuzzy. There are some confusers nearby that have either a hard, dark, shiny green top or kind of a third um, uh, bottom part of the leaf, but this one is smooth on both sides to separate it out. Um, it grows from 2 meters to up to 6 meters if it's in really, really ideal conditions. And it's a highland shrub. It likes upland areas on South Pacific islands. Um, the stems are described as woody, but it's very much a brushy, more thickety sort of plant. It's not a hardwood tree. You wouldn't mistake it for firewood. And while they're woody and fibrous and shattery, um, they again are not brittle. And that's important because when the plant is harvested, the root is the focus of use, but the lower stems are sometimes chewed and sometimes used as well. In particular, the lower stems are just a handy way to transport it and to carry it around. And so they'll carry it around by one stem with the root on the bottom, because that mass of tangled roots, by showing that, you're showing how old the plant is. And an older plant with a bigger, more tangled root ball is a better plant, a more powerful plant. And if we're especially sharing it with a guest or sharing it with a loved one or a village elder, having that bigger one shows that you're giving a more prestigious, more honored plant. Um, Now, we're only talking about Peppermint mysticum from the Western diagnosis, but throughout this area, there's full classification for varieties and species based upon spotting, modeling, coloring, and texture of the stems in particular for telling them apart. Um, the roots, sorry, I already said the roots are harvested for medicinal use. Um, let's see, they're considered mature at 3 to 5 years and about 5 to 8 centimeters thick. Uh, I've got some sources on there for you. There's so many fantastic um, online databases for this. I've tried to keep myself very close to um, the sources that were being used by the veterans that I was observing, because I wanted to know where they were getting their information. This is not the best map. I did look in several areas to try to get a better one. Let's see if my mouse makes it a little bit easier. I missed my pointer from the classroom. We're here in the South Pacific with Palau and Guam here, where my mouse is moving. And then you'll recognize Papua New Guinea here and the Solomons and Vanuatu. This is a very much an area where early works by Forst and uh, other scholars had shown that Kava was being traded intensely throughout inter-island trade systems as a valuable, mildly psychoactive plant. And then you can see over Tahiti and the Samoas. You today hear a lot about usage of it in Vanuatu, Tuvalu, the Samoas, and in, of course, Fiji right there. Although the Australians are happy to claim it too. Um, Always exciting to see traditional preparations. This is these are photographs from Davis and Brown's work way, way back in 1999. There were some earlier studies in the 70s and back in the 1940s. Unfortunately, their photographs were not as nice, their images were not as nice. And I didn't see a lot of access to them. In other words, these were not things that were being found by veterans who were trading this information. The Davis and Brown paper, because it went to an online database with Library of Congress, it's readily accessible. And I did see that several veterans groups and discussion boards had accessed that and looked at it. On the left, we can see here, these are just commercial preparations. You can at local pharmacies, even local supermarkets in many parts of South Pacific, parts of New Zealand and Australia, see Kava powder. It's been mechanically ground, mechanically pounded up into a powder. They do use the basal stems as well as the roots. How do they prepare it locally? Here's a local farmer, and look, they're just on the top of the house, taking advantage of sunlight for drying. It's not a ferment like tobacco or cacao or a lot of other commonly used plants. It's very much, they want to get it dry. They want to make sure it doesn't mold. And then after you get it dry, you're going to either grind it or you're going to shred it. I wanted to show you some kava. This is one, and I saw this picture in several places. This seems to be kind of legendarily large example of it. Look how it's so hard to tell where you would have it. This plant was over 6 meters tall. This is just the stem base from the cluster and the clump. And see, they brought it up. Rarely would something this big actually be dug up because of conservation and preservation for it. Many times when they'll harvest, there's been a move, there had been a traditional method of exposing it and just pulling off some of the roots, but then reburying the root mass so the plant continues to grow. And a lot of nice management by the people in the Pacific who are growing it, not just ripping them out of the ground or taking them out, but just doing a little bit, taking what you need, taking a little bit of harvest, but putting those roots back, putting those stems back and growing them, so that you maintain a supply for a long period of time. Because of the interest, people are interested in kava not just as a natural product and something that they can purchase online or something that they can purchase in the supermarket. They're interested in it because it's excessively traditional, meaning you can, if you're a savvy adult, one of the veterans, you can with your own computer or with your own phone do some research, and you can connect with kava resorts, kava growers, with traditional outlets, with commercial outlets. There are kava spas that people will go to where you can pay them, stay in a lodge or a village near where they're producing it and use their kava products. And that is kind of an ecotourism or a medical tourism, cultural tourism for a lot of people in the area, particularly in Fiji and Vanuatu. But it actually is funding conservation and farming. This is a commercial kava farm. There were several that I've found that had a strong online presence, and they're showing you this is where it's grown. You can come see it. They'll show you the processes of how they harvest it. They will, make sure that you can see that they're not using a lot of strong agrochemicals. And they want you to know that they are sustainably producing it and that you can be a responsible consumer. I think this is one of the big things several mentioned of, I can see where this comes from. It is still grown in the uplands. And so instead of, each village or each family knew a few areas on their property, or as they were growing other crops, they just made sure there was room for kava. It is now grown in large plots for commercial production because it's very economically valuable. It's in great demand. The traditional methods of vegetative propagation were simply to, as we saw, when you're pulling that root out, pull off what you want to harvest, but then to spread out that root mass and rebury and let vegetative propagation and dispersal happen in that way. But here we have traditional knowledge mixing with modern knowledge of how to do sustainable agriculture. And so you can simply take the cuttings and grade them by the different sizes. And then they'll either use hydroponics to get quick root starts on them, or trays. And then these are, oops, I apologize. I thought I had the next slide. Oh, I'm covering her myself. Here she is. She's behind the view screen for me. Here you have a young lady. When she gets it to a foot or so with a nice root mass, they'll plant them and intersperse them there. There we go. There's so many fantastic images, mainly because part of the appeal of kava, part of the reason why it's been discovered and it's being used by so many veterans is it is available online. You can Google it. And because of this level of popularity, there are a lot of websites, destination tourism, go take it. People are very proud of it. In particular, this is from kavatime.us, which is not in the US, but in Fiji. And they really want you to know that they use it and that it's incorporated into daily life. They're really trying to make sure that we don't take the Western and especially the European Union view of it as this is a psychoactive, this is a drug. But no, this is a common standard uh, beverage that is drunk from many parts of life. So here's a great story of 10 traditional occasions where you could get a shell of kava and talking about it being incorporated into weddings, graduations, family events, much in the same way we would have beer or we would have wine in many Western settings. I put some links in for you because you can have my presentation and hopefully you'll go find more really fun things about this culture of kava use. Um, Being an anthropologist, I could not resist. I tried to be good and not put too much in about traditional preparations. But ethnographically, there's so much fantastic information about kava. Um, and again, because it is still in daily use, we continue to get more information, and it's been written down for a long period of time. The older reports from Samoa and Vanuatu say that kava needs to be prepared by chewing. And this is different than the chewing that you'll get things like ayahuasca uh, or some of the milder psychoactives that you'll see in Central and South America, where they are chewed or masticated, usually by women. Um, and then you're supposed to incorporate the saliva because the enzymes in the saliva help to break it down and to jumpstart fermentation. And then it's spat into a pot with water to start a fermentation process to extract the psychoactives. It's not the same with kava. Kava, you're supposed to chew them without spit. You're supposed to wash your mouth out very, very carefully, multiple times with water and pat it dry. And then it's supposed to be young people, children, adolescents, either male or female, depending on the use for it. If you're going for a ritual purpose that is for males, you would have only young males chew it. But for a broader celebration where more people could partake, you could have males and females chew it. And sometimes it's just whatever young kid is around. Older people can chew it, but they don't want to. They say it's really, really hard work to chew it. So you need to chew, and it takes an hour or more of chewing and checking it and putting it back in and chewing it to release the compounds into that pulp. And then it's extracted by soaking in cool or tepid water. The Fijians are not chewers. The Fijians, they pound it or they grind it with wood and stone tools. And then if you can see here on the right-hand side, these lovely multi-legged conical open vats or cauldrons. That shape of that cone-shaped preparation is not just a traditional vessel shape in the area, but it's that shape because it's believed you can swirl it around and grind it more. You mix it well. You can see she's aerating it by scooping it and pouring it, scooping it and pouring it. Another method that's more common now, people don't like the bits. So for modern preparations, they will use a piece of cheesecloth or small chalk to filter it up. If you're a modern use, you can buy yourself a nice little pouch or a nice little strainer pouch to not get the pieces of fiber in your drink. It takes quite a while because it's a cool water extraction, not days. Um, from straight from the root, the chewing, the pounding, and the soaking, extracting out. You can see here on this upper picture, um, while the standard method is to prepare this liquid or this kava tea and drink it as a beverage, There are still people who will just chew the stems, either pick up a piece and chew them, or have them like a tobacco chew them and just have a little bit of balm release in your mouth. And you can buy it that way. Several of the veterans mentioned that they use this to break their tobacco addiction, that having a little bit of it to help them chew it, help them to get over the oral fixation on tobacco, or like either from a cigarette or from chewing tobacco. And so, who am I to? Yeah, it works for them. I wanted to show you a little bit about how it was prepared. From the very top, I've got I'm going to move so I can see you guys. You can see the shells, or they'll use small cups back and forth. Remember, this is a sediment heavy, it's fiber dissolved in water, and so you need to stir it a lot, you need to aerate it a lot. It also helps the flavor so it's not as bitter. It's also part of the theater of publicly kitty kitty publicly preparing it and offering it to others. Here we have where it's wrapped in leaves here, and it's been pounded before having water added to it. And then you see a little bit of the preparation. Pardon me, for some reason my cat thinks this is a really great time to get involved. Okay, sorry, it's not a Zoom meeting if you don't have someone's pet. Modern usage, how do people use it today other than the traditional sense? What I just showed you of preparation in the home, uh, or by a few elders who are preparing it for a large public celebration, that's still very much a part of daily life, or typical usage in the South Pacific. But what about the United States? What about Europe? Within the European Union, within North America, I don't know a lot about distribution and usage in Mexico, but in North America and Canada, this is one of the more popular uh, uh, herbal medicines or natural medicines available over the shelf. This is one of the most common teas. So much of this Yogi brand, uh, you can see, yes, it's not Indian in origin, it's not Southeast Asian, but here in the US, we're not too picky about how things are marketed. And even some of uh, the individuals I've talked to about it who are using it kind of think it's from India. Um, and some of them said maybe it's from the Middle East. Just, it was purely due to the packaging. It was due to what their tea box from Walmart or Kroger or the other supermarkets and pharmacies looks like. Um, Herbal tea is the most common preparation. Uh, the fact that it's available as a tea and available right there in the supermarket next to chamomile and others is one of the major factors that had them saying, I feel safe using it. It's over the counter. It's very natural. This is still the United States, and we do like a good pill. A lot of Kava is sold with a powdered root extract. There we go. I've lost my mouth. As powdered root extract in capsules. Again, more traditional American practices, we like pills. And we tend to view it feels more medicine-y if we take it as a pill versus the ritual of drinking and sipping a tea. But the thing that's a really interesting trend is right here, and I've added the link into Rolling Stone magazine. You know you've hit the big times as a traditional medicine when there's articles and linkages in Rolling Stone and in USA Today and other venues. There were some in Guns and Ammo. There were some in different veterans magazines. Not official. It is banned by all of the branches of the U.S. military. It is banned in the European Union for most active military personnel. But veterans in particular are using it. See how this has become a kind of a connoisseur cocktail. And something that's hit a lot is bars and natural shops and herbal shops near military bases will serve kava as an option. And there are actual Kava clubs and Kava bars that are opening up. Just as I heard about this conference uh, and was thinking about the paper last month, um, I had an article someone brought me of in Fort Bragg here in Texas, they were opening a new Kava bar. So it is an ongoing interest here amongst military veterans. Um, I mentioned one of the reasons why we have so many veterans who've had very long tours of service in active war zones, 10 years, 15 years, but also why there are so many concentrations of those veterans at state universities here in Texas. Um, Epidemiologically, a large percentage of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of them, one of the reasons why they are veterans and not active military, they thought they were going in for a career. But at 10 years, 15 years, some of them are at that 20-year range. They've actually been discharged on disability for post-traumatic stress disorder or generalized anxiety because of the worry that that level of chronic anxiety increases other mental health problems, mental health injury, particularly high rates of suicide, self-harm, and depression. So many of them, as they are discharged, are given these diagnoses, and then they're under treatment by the Veterans Administration um, for management of these long-term symptoms. So when they show up with us, often very freshly discharged, they're going to go and finish that college degree. They are carrying with them these diagnoses and these prescriptions. They are frequently treated with a variety of synthetic antidepressants, sedatives, and antipsychotic drugs. They the widespread opinion by the veterans is we don't like those treatments. We don't like those um, medications. They worry that when they do take the medication, they feel very, very dull and very, very drugged. They just come from a situation where you really needed to be alert. And they have this dichotomy of like, well, to come back to regular life, the real world, I have to be drugged. I can't be myself. I can't be alert. The skills that kept me alive are bad things. So they don't like that. They like being able to be very aware and very in control. But they are also aware that because of their history, they might be overly anxious or overly observant, and the real world might be a little too much sensory stimulation. And so they like kava because whereas caffeine can help you wake up, kava can help you be a little relaxed and yet still not feeling like you're a drag or not feeling like you're wrapped up in cotton wool or numbed to the world. They really didn't like that feeling of unreal or lack of reality because they said, one, it makes my anxiety worse because with everything feels like a weird dream. I feel like I can't escape it. The traumas that I have could emerge without my control, or they're underneath festering. They also talked about they keep drugging us because they're afraid of us. They're afraid that if this anxiety or this post-traumatic stress was there, we might be too aggressive. Um, it's not that we're aggressive; we're just very, very vigilant. And so there were some saying that they worried that prescriptions would actually make them more dangerous because if it felt unreal, they might be in a dream state and they're very worried that they could have an incident or that they could react violently because they felt drugged and thought that they needed to have a very clear mind so that they could maintain themselves, so that they could manage themselves as they had in the past. And again, those skills that kept me alive are the ones that I need to keep. I don't need you to take away who I am. They also didn't like the fact that the prescriptions were met with counseling and psychiatric services. We have to go to a veteran center and go see a counselor. They did like that idea of I'm chronically disabled or I'm chronically needing counseling. They didn't like going that way. They really preferred hanging out with other veterans who understood and being with peer groups and drinking kava socially, like having a beer or, like having a coffee together. They liked the way that it was drunk and how it was, uh, and how it gives them the ability to be in control and knowledgeable. They could educate themselves. They could take advice from peer groups, not from the kind of faceless bureaucratic caregivers. So it's really one of a very ultimate look at why people in general like to choose natural medicines and traditional medicines. They want to look to those older ways of doing things and more uh, self determination. And finally, was that idea of management of their own care. Kava has a recommendation of a large community of veteran peers. They hear about it from veterans. It's word of mouth, and then if it's not word of mouth from others hanging out in the Veterans Resource Center and talking with each other and helping each other to adapt, it's going online. Reddit subgroups. A lot of the information seems to be exchanged on Reddit and online threads. And then there's just some popular articles. The nice thing is most of those will direct you to these private chat groups uh, um, and other resources. So you can talk to someone like you who's been there. But you can also go online and you can find, thanks to their ability to use really good internet sources, they're able to look up traditional practitioners and traditional providers who can give you a lot of information about Kava. They also really like that you can go to the supermarket or you can go to the pharmacy and you can buy it, you can try it, and you can kind of perform your own experiments on uh, um, whether this is going to work for you. Um, so those are kind of negatives. And what about the pros? They're really happy about the fact that this is not some new synthetic drug or some prescription that they're trying out that's going to be changed and tweaked, as they just keep tinkering with their medical balance. They particularly like that this is something that is very well known. It's a very simple preparation, been used for over 3,000 years. They like that they can see where it came from. You can see the plants, you can see that the plants are dried. Depending on how you buy it, it still looks like bits of plant roots. Um, if you have sufficient income, you can go to a farm where they're growing it and see it prepared traditionally and talk to people who've been using it for millennia. Um, they love that it is a social beverage, that it's a ritual beverage like beer, coffee, and tea. Um, and so even when they're just having a cup of tea in their home, and many of them will actually kind of raise their mug to me when I see them on campus and let me know that they've got kava in that travel mug there. Um, they like the sociality of it even when they're drinking it alone because they know they could have it socially. Um, I hope I didn't run over. I want to thank several different sources of information, in particular the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Medicine, Vaults of Arrowwood, and American Botanical Council. Because of what I do, many veterans have sought my office uh, and said, hey, what you know about this? I tell them I'm not that type of doctor, but I am that type of doctor. And I point them towards these very public, very accessible, vetted information sources to help them get started. I want to thank all the veterans at the Stephen F. Austin State University Veterans Resource Center. I know Mikey, and I know Ethan and Ellen, and several of the others. Evan, I can't forget Evan and Roger. I know a lot of them very well. It's been since 2012 that I started taking notes and watching them with their kava consumption, and appreciate their trust in talking to me about it. Um, I want to thank the Reddit groups. There are several Reddit Kava groups and veterans Kava groups that allowed me in, even though they were private groups upon the recommendation of others, and let me ghost there, let me lurk there and ask them questions.